Starting at a new school can be one of life's most nerve-wracking experiences, but starting at a new school in a foreign country? That's a journey filled with excitement, uncertainty, and boundless opportunities. In this story, I'll take you through my first days at a London school, the challenges I faced, and the lessons I learned. But this isn't just my story. It's a reflection of how stepping out of your comfort zone can lead to profound personal growth. Join me as I recount the moments that shaped my first days in London and weave in practical tips, cultural insights, and reflections on language learning. This narrative will inspire not only those navigating new environments but also anyone striving to embrace change and connect with the world. The first moment I stepped into my new school in London, I felt as though I had entered a whirlwind of voices, faces, and movement. It was an entirely new environment, and every sound and sight seemed to vie for my attention. People hurried past me, some chatting animatedly, while others moved with a purposeful focus. Their accents ranged from smooth and polished to quick and clipped, painting a vivid auditory tapestry of diversity that I had never experienced before. The energy was contagious yet intimidating, like the city itself, a kaleidoscope of cultures, languages, and expressions. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing my mix of excitement and nervousness. The thought of finding my place in this bustling environment was daunting. Would I fit in? Would I understand their accents or their unspoken social cues? These questions lingered as I clutched my bag tightly, standing on the edge of the school's entrance hall. It was at that moment I remembered a piece of advice from my teacher back home: every great journey begins with a single step. That single step took me into a labyrinth of experiences that would challenge and transform me. The corridors were alive with motion, lined with students who seemed to have already carved out their spaces in this dynamic ecosystem. Posters announcing club meetings, upcoming plays, and sports events were plastered on walls, each a vibrant invitation to become part of the school's rhythm. Yet, for me, everything felt unfamiliar. Back home, I had been comfortable, blending into a routine that felt like second nature. Here, every moment demanded adjustment, observation, and courage. Navigating my first class was a test of resolve. The teacher's voice was warm yet commanding, and I strained to catch every word, deciphering the nuances of her British accent. My classmates, with their easy camaraderie, seemed like they belonged to a world I was only beginning to understand. They exchanged inside jokes and cultural references that went over my head, leaving me feeling like an outsider. Still, I reminded myself that this was just the beginning. It was a chance to learn, not only academically but socially and culturally. As the day unfolded, I discovered small victories amidst the challenges. A smile from a classmate, a nod of encouragement from a teacher, or even successfully finding my way to the cafeteria. Each moment felt like a step forward. I realized that adapting to this new environment wasn't about immediate success, but about embracing the process. The excitement and trepidation that filled my heart were not just signs of fear but markers of growth. That first day in London was a whirlwind, but it was also the start of an adventure. It taught me that stepping into the unknown is not about being fearless, but about being brave enough to take that first step despite the fear. Little did I know, this journey would not only shape my understanding of the world, but also redefine my understanding of myself. Walking through the bustling corridors of my new school in London, I became acutely aware of one thing: the incredible diversity of accents and voices that filled the air. Each voice seemed to carry a story, a rhythm, a cultural essence that I was only beginning to grasp. Some students spoke in rapid, melodious tones, their words flowing seamlessly into one another, while others were more measured and deliberate, each syllable pronounced with care. It was my first real encounter with the vast spectrum of the English language, a language that adapts to its speaker's identity, geography, and heritage. At first, it was overwhelming. The accents were as varied as the faces around me, and my ears struggled to keep up. Back home, English was taught with a neutral accent, one that felt sanitized and uniform. But here, in the heart of London, the language seemed alive, evolving with every voice. I found myself straining to catch the nuances, the subtle inflections that turned familiar words into something new and exotic. It was a challenge, yes, but also an opportunity to expand my understanding of what language could be. One of the most profound lessons I learned during those early days was the power of observation. I remembered the reading techniques my teacher had taught me back home, skimming for the main idea and scanning for details. Surprisingly, these techniques weren't just for books, they became invaluable tools for decoding conversations. By focusing on key phrases and watching facial expressions, I began to piece together meaning even when the words themselves felt foreign. Despite my initial struggles, the highlight of my first day wasn't just surviving, it was connecting. During a lunch break, I decided to take a leap of faith. I approached a group of classmates who were chatting animatedly at a corner table. My heart raced as I introduced myself, half expecting them to dismiss me as an outsider. Instead, they welcomed me warmly, their smiles dissolving my fears. What struck me most was the diversity within that small group. There was a girl from Nigeria, her voice rich and melodic, sharing stories of her family back home. Beside her sat a boy from Spain, who spoke with a rhythmic cadence that made even mundane sentences sound lyrical. Across from him was a student from Japan, whose quiet demeanor belied a sharp wit that emerged in his carefully chosen words. And then there was a girl from Brazil, her laughter infectious as she recounted a humorous misunderstanding she'd had in English class. Each of them had their own unique journey, their own struggles and triumphs in adapting to this new environment. As we exchanged stories, I realized how much we could learn from one another. Language, I discovered, was not just a barrier but a bridge. Through shared laughter, curiosity, and a willingness to connect, we found common ground despite our differences. That lunch break marked the beginning of friendships that would become a cornerstone of my journey in London. Looking back, those first connections taught me an invaluable lesson: that stepping out of your comfort zone is the key to building meaningful relationships. By embracing diversity and approaching others with an open mind, I not only improved my language skills but also gained a deeper appreciation for the rich tapestry of cultures that make up our world. It was a reminder that, no matter where we come from, we all have stories worth sharing. On the second day of school, I stumbled upon a place that would become my sanctuary, the library. Tucked away in a quieter wing of the building, it was a treasure trove of knowledge and imagination, filled with rows upon rows of books. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The hum of activity outside faded, replaced by the soft rustle of pages turning and the occasional whisper between students. The library became my refuge, a place where I could immerse myself in stories and explore the richness of the English language at my own pace. The first thing that struck me was the sheer variety of books available. There were novels with worn, dog-eared pages that spoke of countless readers who had embarked on the same literary journey. There were also pristine new volumes, their covers gleaming under the library's soft lighting, waiting to be discovered. Fiction, non-fiction, poetry, and reference materials, the possibilities felt endless. It was here that I began to understand the power of reading as a tool for both language learning and personal growth. I started with what felt familiar, novels I had read in translation back home. Picking up the original English versions, I noticed how the language felt different, richer, more nuanced. Words that had once seemed abstract in the classroom came alive in context, woven into sentences that evoked vivid imagery and emotion. One book in particular caught my eye, a classic novel with golden letters etched on the spine. Its opening lines drew me in, and before I knew it, I was lost in its world. Active reading became my secret weapon. Instead of merely skimming through the text, I began to engage with it more deeply. I jotted down unfamiliar words and phrases, looked up their meanings, and tried to use them in my own sentences. I asked myself questions about the characters, their motivations, and the themes of the story. This process not only improved my vocabulary but also helped me think critically and analytically in English. The library wasn't just a place to read, it was a classroom in its own right. The library became my sanctuary, a space where the unfamiliar gradually transformed into the comforting. From the moment I pushed open its heavy oak doors, I was enveloped in an air of quiet reverence. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting a warm glow on the wooden tables and rows of bookshelves that seemed to stretch endlessly. It was a refuge from the noise and motion of the outside world, a place where time slowed and possibilities expanded. On my first visit, I wandered through the aisles with a mix of awe and trepidation. Each shelf seemed to hold a universe of knowledge, its titles whispering promises of adventure, wisdom, and discovery. Some books were worn with age, their spines cracked and pages yellowed, while others gleamed with newness, waiting to be explored. It was here, surrounded by the voices of countless authors, that I began to understand the power of language not just as a tool for communication, but as a gateway to imagination and understanding. One book in particular caught my eye, a classic novel with golden letters etched on its spine. I pulled it from the shelf and ran my fingers over its cover, feeling a connection to the countless readers who had held it before me. Sitting at a corner table, I began to read. At first, the language felt dense, the sentences intricate and demanding of my full attention. But as I persisted, I found myself drawn into the story, losing track of time as the characters and their world came alive in my mind. The library was more than just a collection of books. It was a hub of intellectual curiosity and quiet camaraderie. I noticed other students engrossed in their own pursuits, some poring over textbooks, others sketching in notebooks, and a few simply gazing out the windows, lost in thought. Occasionally, I would overhear snippets of conversation, debates about historical events or analyses of literary themes. It was inspiring to see such a vibrant exchange of ideas, and it motivated me to engage more deeply with my own studies. Active reading became my secret weapon. Instead of merely skimming through texts, I began to engage with them more deliberately. I underlined passages that resonated with me, jotted down questions in the margins, and looked up unfamiliar words in a dictionary. This process not only improved my comprehension but also deepened my appreciation for the richness of the English language. It was like unraveling a tapestry, each thread revealing new layers of meaning and connection. The library also introduced me to the concept of self-directed learning. Back home, education had always felt structured and guided, with teachers providing clear instructions and goals. Here, I was encouraged to take ownership of my learning, to explore topics that intrigued me and to seek out resources independently. It was both liberating and daunting, but the sense of agency it gave me was empowering. I realized that learning wasn't confined to the classroom. It was a lifelong journey shaped by curiosity and initiative. In the weeks that followed, the library became a cornerstone of my routine. I would often spend hours there after school, delving into subjects that fascinated me or simply enjoying the solace it offered. Over time, I began to see it not just as a place of study but as a space for reflection and growth. It was where I could process the challenges of adapting to a new environment, drawing strength from the stories and ideas that surrounded me. One memorable afternoon, I struck up a conversation with a fellow student who shared my corner table. She was reading a book on philosophy, and our discussion quickly spiraled into a debate about the nature of happiness and purpose. It was exhilarating to exchange ideas and challenge each other's perspectives, and it marked the beginning of a friendship built on intellectual curiosity. Moments like these reminded me that the library wasn't just a physical space, it was a community of learners and thinkers, united by a shared love of knowledge. The library also became a bridge between my past and present. Back home, I had always found comfort in reading, and it was a habit that anchored me during this period of transition. The familiarity of losing myself in a good book provided a sense of continuity amidst the upheaval of starting anew. At the same time, the diverse range of voices and perspectives I encountered in the library expanded my horizons, challenging me to see the world through different lenses. Looking back, my time in the library was transformative. It taught me that language learning isn't just about mastering grammar and vocabulary. It's about immersing yourself in stories, ideas, and experiences that broaden your understanding of the world and yourself. It was in those quiet moments among the shelves that I discovered the joy of learning for its own sake, a joy that continues to inspire me to this day. Public speaking has always been a daunting task for many, and I was no exception. The idea of standing before a group of people, all eyes fixed on me, had always been enough to send my heart racing. Back in my home country, I had managed to avoid such situations as much as possible. But here in London, where language was my biggest challenge, there was no escaping it. On my third day at school, the moment I had been dreading arrived. Our teacher, a lively and encouraging woman named Miss Porter, announced that each of us would introduce ourselves to the class. The assignment seemed simple enough on the surface, but for me, it felt like a trial by fire. As my turn drew closer, my palms grew clammy, and I could feel the heat rising to my face. My mind raced with doubts. What if I stumbled over my words? What if my accent made it hard for them to understand me? What if they laughed? When my name was called, I felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. Standing up, I forced myself to take a deep breath and walked to the front of the class. Miss Porter offered me a reassuring smile, which gave me the smallest boost of confidence. Clutching the edge of the teacher's desk for support, I began to speak. My voice was shaky at first, barely audible above the sound of my racing heart. But as I continued, I noticed something remarkable. My classmates were listening attentively. Some nodded encouragingly, while others smiled warmly. Their expressions weren't of judgment, but of understanding and empathy. I spoke about my hometown, my family, and the reasons that had brought me to London. Gradually, my nerves began to subside, replaced by a growing sense of accomplishment. When I finished, the class erupted into applause, and for the first time since arriving at the school, I felt a true sense of belonging. It was a small victory, but it marked a turning point in my journey. Inspired by this experience, I decided to actively work on improving my speaking skills. One technique that proved particularly effective was shadowing. I would listen to recordings of native English speakers, whether from audiobooks, podcasts, or television shows, and mimic their intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation. At first, it felt awkward and unnatural, but over time, I began to notice subtle improvements in my fluency and confidence. Another method I adopted was recording myself while practicing speeches or reading aloud. Listening to these recordings allowed me to identify areas where I needed improvement, such as mispronounced words or awkward pauses. It was an uncomfortable but invaluable exercise that helped me refine my speaking abilities. Additionally, I started participating in class discussions more frequently, even if it was just to ask a question or share a brief comment. Each small step built upon the last, gradually eroding the fear that had once paralyzed me. Beyond the technical aspects of speaking, I also discovered the importance of connection. During one class activity, we were divided into small groups and asked to present on a topic of our choice. My group chose to discuss favorite books, and as we prepared our presentation, I found myself growing more comfortable expressing my thoughts. By focusing on the shared passion for literature, I forgot about my insecurities and spoke with genuine enthusiasm. This taught me that effective communication isn't just about perfect grammar or pronunciation, it's about conveying your ideas with sincerity and confidence. Over time, speaking became less of a hurdle and more of an opportunity. I began to see each presentation, each conversation, as a chance to grow and connect with others. My classmates' kindness and support played a significant role in this transformation. They celebrated my progress and encouraged me to keep pushing my boundaries. Their acceptance gave me the courage to embrace my unique voice, accent, and all. Looking back, those early speaking experiences were some of the most challenging yet rewarding moments of my journey. They taught me that growth often comes from stepping outside your comfort zone and facing your fears head-on. The skills I developed during this time continue to serve me, not just in academic settings but in every aspect of my life. And perhaps most importantly, they reminded me that communication is about more than just words. It's about connecting with others, sharing your story, and building bridges across differences. Meeting classmates from diverse backgrounds was like traveling the world without ever leaving the room. One day, a Japanese friend handed me a small origami crane, a gesture of friendship and good luck. Another day, an Australian classmate greeted me with a cheerful day. These moments taught me that language is more than words. It's a bridge to understanding and connection. Learning English wasn't confined to textbooks. My school organized events, like English Play Day and Story Circle. During English Play Day, we performed short plays, practicing pronunciation and expression. Story Circle allowed us to share personal tales, turning language learning into a creative, interactive experience. Games like Describe and Guess also became a staple. For example, describing a hot drink that wakes you up in the morning and hearing everyone shout coffee made learning vocabulary fun and engaging. As weeks turned into months, I looked back on my journey with pride. The nervous girl who had stepped into the school on day one had grown into a confident speaker, eager to explore and connect. Techniques like shadowing, active reading, and skimming had become second nature. But it was the friendships and cultural exchanges that truly enriched my experience. My journey at a London school was more than an academic adventure. It was a personal transformation. I learned that stepping out of your comfort zone opens doors to growth, connection, and self-discovery. Whether through speaking, reading, or simply listening, each moment was a step forward. So, what about you? Have you ever embarked on a journey that changed your perspective? Share your stories, and let's continue to learn from one another.